Welcome back to the Shield Army. We are glad that you are here with us. I am Chaplain Hughes, and I am here with Chaplain Potter and Chaplain Stephenson, and we're looking forward to this conversation today. Guys, we have been out of the pocket for a little bit. We've had a lot going on, which is what we're going to talk about. It's good to be sitting at the table with you guys today.
Absolutely. It's good to be back, man. We have frolicked all over the place, and it's good to be back in the office.
Yeah, just so much going on here locally and elsewhere. And we're going to be hitting on that today. But I'm so grateful I get to do this with you guys, and we get to shoulder Shield together.
Yeah, and we have, I think that is perfect timing what you just said for what we're going to talk about today with what we've experienced. Some people know, some people have followed on social media and have seen it. Some people we've talked to that know, but maybe not everybody that's listening knows about what all's been happening in our world the last 3 weeks. The end of January, there was a horrible, tragic event in Arlington, Virginia at the Reagan National Airport where a American Airlines flight and a Military Blackhawk collided when that flight was on final approach. Unfortunately, 67 people lost their lives that day. And definitely not a scenario where we would have before then ever saw Shield chaplaincy playing a part. But that's in turn exactly what happened. And so we've had a lot of questions about that. People have said, why Shield? Why are you guys involved in that? And so that's kind of what we want to talk about today. But I think we need to make sure very early on we say and we put out there a blanket statement that there's a lot that we can't talk about. There's a lot of things that we can't share. There's a lot of things that we don't want to share because that was, a very pivotal moment, a very dark moment for a lot of people, a lot of families. And what we're not doing is we're not trying to gain anything off of anyone's worst day. What we're doing is, we get called out to a lot of different traumatic events, but why something like this? Why do we play a part in that? And what does that look like from a general standpoint? And so that's kind of what we want to talk about today. And so I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys, with everyone listening. And I'm looking forward for us to have this conversation to kind of talk through what we did. So guys, where do you want to jump in at?
Yeah. I do appreciate you hitting the point that we don't capitalize or we don't profit from people's darkest hours. As you know, Shield Chaplaincy, we're a nonprofit. We raise our own salaries. And so there's a fine line between talking about, hey, here's what we do and here's the need, and then using that to gain profit. So thank you for being sensitive to that. And I know the people that are involved in this would also appreciate that as well. And that is something we believe very strongly in. But when one of these events comes to our table, if you will, we get that notification or that call, I think first it starts with the network that we run in. Darren's been doing this for almost 15 years now.
Yeah, over 15 years. And we've been very fortunate to, through the years, to form some good relationships. And one of those relationships that is a more recent development that we have formed is with Mutts with a Mission. Most of you, any of you who are familiar with Shield now, know that we have Scarlett. She's a certified service and facility dog. And Mutts with a Mission, when they supply an agency with individuals within agencies around Virginia and beyond, the expectation is that those of us who have these certified service dogs that are utilized as facility dogs to help, the expectation is that we are going to have each other's backs. And so it's a neat family to be a part of. And I've been very fortunate to form some good relationships with the other facility dog handlers. And so with this event, one of the handlers for these facility dogs is at the Metro Washington Airport Authority, or MWA. And when this went down, he reached out almost immediately to those of us who have dogs like Scarlett and asked if we could make ourselves available. And in fact, one or two of the handlers that are closer up in the Vienna and Winchester area, they they were on site almost immediately. In fact, one went immediately, and then others of us began going up. So Scarlett and I were asked to go up on Saturday following, right after the event, and upon arriving there and meeting with a team of people, I just offered you two guys as well. I'm like, hey, I've got two more law enforcement chaplains, and these guys do this full time. This is our lives, our life. This is what we do. We serve people in times of great tragedy and traumatic events. This is what we do, and so they're like, by all means, have them come up.
Yeah. So just to kind of maybe repeat a little bit. So it sounds like with a mission, if people don't quite know, there's a network, almost a grid that is put across statewide and kind of the eastern seaboard, that if there's an incident, that we can kind of connect the dots and provide those resources to those areas. And we'll get into in just a minute kind of what Scarlett provides. Pretty incredible stuff. But then it kind of moves into where we got deployed. You get called quite often to utilize Scarlett for child interviews or child against crime stuff or local stuff, but you also get pulled regionally because of that network, and that's a great honor. One of the things that we kind of want to hit on early on is in chaplaincy and in our world, you have to be very respectful of the people that you're assisting. And one of the ways to do that is we come by invitation only. So we can offer ourselves, and if they don't desire our presence or our resources, then that is no problem. We don't get hurt by that. There's enough we have going on in our front yard where we can probably choose to be happy with that. So, but it requires a request for assistance, kind of for documentation purposes. There's a mutual aid request. So departments get that. When you need a resource, oftentimes there's that official request, and that came out from MWA in coordination with Virginia State Police to bring some peers in. And so all three of us are certified peers, so we walk across the state with people through tragic events. So not only do we wear the chaplain hat, but we also wear that peer support side, and that's just really walking with people through their darkest hours. So we deployed out, I think it was Sunday afternoon.
Yep.
And got there Sunday night, kind of set up shop. And then you want to kick into what Monday looked like?
Yeah. So, when you were talking about the invitation only thing, one of the things that kind of hit me thinking about that week as we're talking about this is not only was the invitation there, but one of the things I told someone recently I was sharing with about this experience was I was blown away by not only the invitation, but by the openness of which we were received.
Yep.
And the amount of ability we were given to be in all the places to help take care of the folks that were there. It was extremely more open than I thought it would have been considering the circumstances. And so once, Monday rolls around, obviously there's got to be some coordination of all the people that are on site. There's got to be some planning to make the best use and steward the resources that are there as best as possible. And so there's a couple of different command centers that are set up, one in particular for peer support. And so we sat at that table, and we're given a seat at that table for the week. And so we would work with that group of people who were in charge of making sure that all of the people there were taken care of that week.
And again, when we come into a situation like this, we kind of just talked about this in a previous episode about coming under authority.
Yep.
When you're asked to go into somebody else's house to provide assistance in whatever form that takes, you check your ego at the door.
Yep.
And you come under authority. You come under whoever's on point. It's like you just remember that level of respect that is needed. Now, we also part of this is we put out on the table what our strengths are, and so we can best utilize our assets, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's part of kind of Adam and my background a little bit in the fire and EMS world. There's the ICS model, the ICS model is you have an incident commander, and part of that is you have to let them know what resources are on the table. And so you do that appropriately, and specifically for this incident, honestly, peer support a little bit was later on. They actually requested law enforcement chaplains in the mutual aid request. So they wanted us to fill that role and to walk with their men and women who had a lot of questions, frankly, had a lot of hurts and emotions. And so we just get to walk with them through it.
Yeah, and so what that involves and what's really interesting is when you get there and you talk about all the different resources that are there, we get split up amongst different teams of people, that some that we knew because of our network with Mutts with a Mission, and some we didn't know because of the particular incident at hand. And then we get to start forming these teams, and then we get to go out and start doing what we were asked to do as a part of these teams. And so we rotated to different locations in that community, within that airport community, and began to just the term, I think we used it in a previous episode as well, was ministry of presence.
Yep.
Just being able to be there with people, because you talk about the questions. What winds up happening is conversations that we get to have with people to talk about, how they're feeling, what they're going through, what they're experiencing, those kind of things, but we're doing that as a part of these separate teams that are rotating through these community places in that airport community, working together to figure out how to best provide and take care of those people that are walking through such a tragic time.
One of the psychologists that we work with there, and they served a federal agency, we'll just say it that way, and man, we worked hand in hand with that person, and it was so awesome to be able to walk beside them and provide resources and just kind of be a team. And I think we respected each other's lanes. But what they were saying was, in that ministry of presence, they said, it's a success to me if that thread of I'm in a traumatic situation is broken just for a minute and they get to be a normal person.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
At lunch, one of the biggest things is just sitting with them, eating with them, just watching them laugh and cut up a little bit, telling funny stories and letting them be normal humans just for a minute before they go back out and deal with that tragedy. One of the coolest things, and we get the benefit of seeing it on a somewhat daily basis with Scarlett, is we can walk around and like you said, Adam, the doors were just open.
Yep.
There was some obviously appropriate security measures.
Absolutely,
that we went through
absolutely.
That they put in place for us, and we certainly respect that, with identification and escorts and communication and just verifying where we're all at. We weren't given the keys to the kingdom, if you will. But in walking with these men and women who were dealing with a large-scale, horrific disaster, when we got there wasn't a full recovery of people. And so they were very much active. And so on scenes like that, if you've ever seen us on a scene, one of the things we try not to do is I don't want to add to your plate. You're already dealing with a lot. I just want to walk beside you through it. And so we get to do that, but at appropriate times when we bring the dogs in, for me, that was the coolest thing to watch. And we have Scarlett, so we have one. And yet that was one of my biggest takeaways, is watching them work. I can walk into a scene, I can make people laugh, we can do whatever, but when Scarlett walks in, that's when people, they break that chain and they become normal for a little bit. One specific scenario was in one of the agencies that we were privileged to walk with through. They were tasked with a lot of the evidence-related tasks. And in talking to them, they were bothered by very specific things with items or sounds that they saw and heard, the phones ringing, the whatever. And so they were talking with me about that. Well, when the dogs walked in, they knelt down and they just kind of melted. And they began talking, hey, I have this person at home. I have this child at this age. I have this. And it makes perfect sense why they were struggling through that. And so the dogs are just this emotional breaching tool that breaks down some of those barriers. Then we can walk beside them as chaplains or as peers of, hey, what are you doing with that? What are you doing with that baggage? That's normal that you're carrying that. How are you sleeping? What can I do to help you through that?
Yeah, it's tremendous to see the dogs work, and of course, Scarlett's with me 24/7, and you're right, we see that locally, but we also, with the vast majority anyway of the people that we meet with, we've already formed a relationship with them. What was, I think, neat, especially for you guys, to go to a different place with people we've never met before and see how effective Scarlett and other dogs were in opening those doors. And indeed, even Sunday before you all arrived, we had a few of the dogs over to meet with family members of those lost in this incident. And again, to see the different dogs, the different personalities, and how different people would gravitate to the different personalities and the dogs, and it really is. These are wonderful animals that have a specific purpose, and they do it well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching people have a few minutes of normalcy when those dogs would come around, because it's everything they're dealing with is so high stress, so much tragedy, so much pain that's affiliated with everything that's happening, no matter if they're directly connected to that incident or not. Even people who were there from outside the area that were doing their jobs, that type of scene has its effect on everybody, regardless of their connection with it. And so to see these dogs make their entrance into their life on multiple occasions, as we watched throughout the week that we were there, and to watch them have those, few minutes each, a couple times a day, like having those few minutes of just as close to normal to what they could have, was really cool.
I think, Gareth, the other day you said it so well. It was like they were transported back home just for that moment, because of course many people have pets back home, and just for that moment, even if it was just for 30 seconds, a minute or two, while they were petting a dog, it was that sense of relief and normalcy. I'm back home. I'm remembering my dog. Boy, I miss my dog, and this is good. And of course, that's just one piece of the puzzle here, right? It's one piece of what we did there. And one of the things that was, for me, that was very special is to watch you two use your gift mix and just your abilities to connect with people, and to see the different ways that you were able to speak into the various situations that were popping up as you met different people in different locations around the airport there, and the different scenes. For me, that I was by myself for. When we started this thing, I was by myself on point, and to have other chaplains now to be alongside me, it was a proud moment, and to see how God was using you to help bring some comfort, or just to give maybe an encouraging word, or maybe just a little guidance. In small ways of how to kind of shoulder the things that they were being exposed to in that moment.
Just talking before this episode, when in helping launch SHIELD several years ago, it was just Darren. So any incident, any scene, it was just primarily him. And then a couple years ago, I was able to join. Then it was Darren and Gareth. And now when we roll into a scene, it's not Darren, Gareth, and Adam. It's the SHIELD team. And we get to walk through stuff together. And it is neat. It's an oiled machine now. We understand where each person's at and kind of their strengths and abilities. And it was awesome to be able to do that. I think if people could truly understand the weight of those type of incidents, because we're exposed to all pretty much all that they're exposed to as well. So we have that contact. We're seeing the evidence, we're seeing the things they're seeing, and we're seeing the trauma that's happening on their face. We're watching them say, yeah, I haven't slept in 2 days, or I just can't get this out of my brain, or I don't know why God would let this happen. So being able to navigate that with people and walk beside them is just such a privilege. And one of the things that's amazing about having a team is some of the days were extremely long. I think I had by the time I left my house to the time I got back, just working hours, boots on the ground, not hanging out at the hotel or dinner. I think it was 78 hours. It was a ton of time, from getting vehicles squared away, getting deployed down there, doing all that. Sometimes we were up at 5 a.m. We'd get back at 6 or 8. Sometimes others were up at 2 or 3 in the morning.
I was going to say, if I could sleep till 5 o'clock at a hotel, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I slept that much, but
yeah, it was a lot. It was a heavy lift, and what we got to do is come back together and to decompress through that, and that was truly life-giving. Trauma is a ripple effect.
Yeah,
and so we got to see the trauma of watching 67 people be recovered and their items and all those things. We got to see the trauma and the effects of just some of the political tension that was in that area, and we probably won't open that too much, but man, it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch these agencies struggle through some of that, and then be able to come back together and kind of offload that.
And I think what we experience, I think a good way to kind of try to communicate for people who probably don't. One of the things that we get is we get a very much a 10,000 foot view of everything, because we are with everybody from the newest guy, boots on the ground, or lady, all the way to the top command staff. What we see is the emotional, physical, relational, spiritual needs that exist for every person, from the very newest, again, boots on the ground person, all the way to the very top person in command. And we are not there for just one group of folks. We're not there just for one agency. We're not there just for one rank. We're there for everybody across the board. And that's the true reality of how we serve too here in our own home front. We're there for everybody. And so we are trying to figure out how best to help everyone that's there in every different situation that happens, and so everybody's needs that they have looks different, and the way we meet those needs look different.
Yes, I was going to say, some people might have an impression of a chaplain that, they're just going to go in with the Bible and start trying to convert everybody there, that kind of thing, and it's really not how we operate. Now, if somebody wants to have a spiritual discussion, if they need to, if they need to help, if they need some help walking through some of the questions they have of what you were saying earlier about why would God allow this, or that kind of thing, maybe we touch on that for a bit while we're there. But you have to understand, this is an ongoing, active scene, right, for days, and so we just meet whatever need is set before us. And so I remember very specifically one time, Adam, maybe you can share about that. Just trying to bring a little bit of relief by meeting maybe a little bit of a physical need.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I was sitting here thinking about that as you were talking about that, because for me, this was one of my favorite moments that we had, because it was something so easy for us to be able to do for somebody. We walked into one of the locations there, and I began talking with a gentleman who worked for a company that was there to provide help for a specific need that they had during this time. And I looked at him and I said, after seeing everything I had seen for the couple of days so far we had been there, for me, he had one of the most toughest jobs of everybody there had a tough job, don't get me wrong, but I just can't imagine particularly what he was doing. And so I went up to him and I just said, hey, look, I know that there's probably really nothing we can do because what you're doing is extremely difficult. But is there anything that we can do for you, we can get for you, anything at all? And he looked up at me and he said, I've only been able to smell jet fuel for days. He said, I would love a donut. And I thought, are you kidding me? Like, of all the things this guy could ask for right now, like, he wants something as simple as a donut. So I came to you guys and said, hey, we need to go upstairs. We need to buy some donuts.
I was like, Lord,
Yeah, I mean,
here I am, send me.
That's a man after my own heart. I mean, don't underestimate the power of a donut.
Yeah. So, we could not get straight to where we were going from where we were. So we had to wait just a little bit to get back to that location so that we could do that. And we immediately made a beeline for the Dunkin' Donuts that was on this side of security so that we didn't have to go through the TSA checkpoint or anything, which we could get through fairly easy with the NY police and stuff. But still, there was one this side. And so we went, and we didn't just buy a donut. We bought 4 dozen donuts. We had every type.
At the register, man.
Yes, she's like, what?
And there might be people listening that thinks, you guys are chaplains, why are you buying donuts? Well, the reason we bought donuts is because a man who was going through something as hard as he was going through, the only request he had was a donut. And that's a simple, easy fix for us, a simple, easy need that can be met from us. And so we took that back down. He wasn't the only person that was there. There were multiple people there. And so we bought a lot of donuts so that they could all, maybe somebody else could use a donut. Yep. And that's a real easy something for us to be able to do. And I remember going back down there and I literally said to him, hey, eat donuts to your heart's content.
Yep.
And that was one of my favorite moments. It was something really small, but that was the one thing in that moment that he could think that would do him some good.
What was so cool after that, if you remember, we took them kind of in one of the little side rooms.
Yeah.
So it got them away from all the stuff they were interacting with.
Yes, absolutely.
So they came into that room. We had a dog or two in there, and that's what's so cool about having highly trained dogs. This is just a shameless plug for Mutts with a Missions, Mutts with a Mission. We had donuts. There was food all in there, and the dogs were on point.
Yep.
If my dog, my personal dog, comes in the room with 4 dozen donuts, like someone's going to get bit.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to get a donut.
Yeah.
Those dogs behaved so appropriately.
Yeah.
And were not distracting. And truly, I don't know if you remember some of the conversations they started opening up.
Yeah.
While they're sitting there eating this donut and we're laughing and cutting up, and they're saying, hey, I had to do this search warrant. Remember that? Or I worked with you on this scene. That was awful.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing is just decompressing.
Yeah.
And while that may seem silly, what that is I don't know if you guys grew up in the country, but when you cook like pinto beans or you're canning something, you have a little pressure relief valve on the top that starts jiggling.
Yep.
So it won't explode. Those moments let people let off just a little bit of pressure. In the counseling world, it's a catharsis. There's just that little bit of a release. And so that may be truly life-giving to those people.
I'm sorry about this, but you just mentioned pinto beans and a pressure relief valve.
Yeah, we'll have to table that discussion for later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, it was a privilege to walk with so many different agencies, both local, both federal, from the private sector. I think some of my favorite interactions were honestly with some of our divers. Those are some tough guys.
Yeah.
Some brutal fellas.
Yep.
And they actually began requesting us come every morning and every evening so that when they got out of the water, when they went into the water, when they got out, they would have something to look forward to.
Yep.
That's a really big deal.
Yeah.
From some of the toughest, gristliest fellas probably that I've ever met to say, hey, all day long, I waited for you guys to be here. That's pretty significant.
I'll never forget one of those divers. You were talking to him, and he was, I can't remember if it was Scarlet or if it was one of the other dogs that were there, but you were having a conversation with him, and I'll never forget what I heard him say that day. It was early. This was like 6 a.m., 6:15 in the morning. They were getting ready to get in the water, And he said he was just loving on the dog, and he just said, "This is my favorite part of the week, right here. Is this moment right now." He said, "When we get a chance to have these dogs, this is my favorite part of the week." But what was so cool was, like, somebody in here used the term earlier, emotional breaching tool, about Scarlett and these dogs. That allowed you to connect with those guys, you know, and for us to be there in the mornings to talk to them. But he said, "This is my favorite moment of the week." But and watch these guys, like you said, so burly, so gristly, you know, and to just have those moments that they could look forward to, like you talked about, in the mornings and the evenings, and sometimes even at lunch when we were there in the middle of the day when they would come out or whatever. But just to be there to have a conversation with them, just to have a normal moment of conversation with them.
Just to get them to open up. And some of that particular gentleman, I was able to ask, "Have you ever been a scene like this?" And he has never done body recovery. He was involved in a lot of pretty significant projects on the underwater side of things, but this is the first time that he had ever removed people from a river bottom. And that week he had double digits that was attached to his name of people that he removed from the bottom. That's weighty.
Yeah.
And for them to just go, "Could you come by tomorrow morning?" And we have coffee and we're laughing and picking and they're rubbing the dogs. If that's all we did, I'm thankful we got that opportunity.
Yeah.
And that was just probably a 10-minute snapshot on what we did.
Yeah.
We've been kind of talking about all these different agencies, you know, whether they be the local or federal or other groups that were contracted to come in. For me, what was so impressive is to see how many different agencies came together. And I'm sure at the highest levels, there's got to be, you know, there's probably some butting of the heads here and there behind the scenes. It's impossible to have an event that big and without having at least some of that. But I got to tell you, we got to a good cross section of everything that was going on there. I was so impressed with everyone's actions and how they were interacting with each other and the work that they were doing. It made me, I don't know, it just made me, trying to find the right word. It was just so admirable to see how they went about doing their work and how they were all in with this. They were giving it everything they had, like this, to see that they were handling this situation with the dignity that was required, the respect, the diligence. It was a very impressive thing to see, and I was, you know, I'm just a chaplain here in Roanoke, Virginia, but I was proud of them for the work that they did and how they went about doing it.
I guess to sum it up, kind of the picture that is, some of those professions are callings.
Yeah.
And I've worked in jobs where you punch in, punch out, and whatever happens, happens. It was absolutely clear that those men and women had a calling, and they were doing that with the utmost respect.
I'm sure you guys will probably remember what I'm talking about, but we were walking in front of one of the buildings, and we encountered somebody from a very high federal place in one of the federal agencies. And if you don't remember, they handed us a challenge coin and a patch. And I remember him getting, him heading towards that emotional place, talking about this incident and how it had affected him and the work that they were doing and that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to be honest, as someone for years, you know, I've got 17 years on the fire side of things, but even with that, like, I've never really had that federal connection, you know, and then we get here and we are just inundated with federal agencies and people. And when you see it on the news and your mind tries to wrap its head around everything that's happening, there's absolutely no way you can truly understand what those people are doing, what those people are going through until you've been in the middle of a situation like this. Yeah. And we got to see it firsthand, and we got to develop relationships with them one-on-one. And I was quickly reminded, you know, we talked earlier about everybody having different types of needs. Like, as I listened to him talk when we were standing out there, every one of those people at the end of the day are still just people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's right.
And this affects them the same way it would affect someone else who never would meet anyone on that level. Like, just because they work for that agency or they hold that title or they're way up in the government or way up whatever, at the end of the day, those people are still people. They hurt, they feel those things, and they have to see more of that kind of stuff than anybody else. And they have to learn how to deal with it over and over and over again. And I'm really thankful, Dan, like you were talking about earlier, I'm really thankful that we got to go in and maybe try to help push that along a little bit, help them try to figure out how to handle that and decompress with that. And then again, the agencies that we worked alongside with, much with the mission, all the different other groups that were there, the different police agencies that were represented, and got to go on and be a part of helping these people decompress, find a little bit of normalcy in those moments. So we got to have conversations with them and let them just be. One of my favorite people in the world, oftentimes, every time I talk to him, he says to me, you got to find, I realize there's times that you have to do, but you have to find times to just be.
Yep.
And we were able to give people a chance to stop doing just for a little bit and give them a chance to just be. Such
a privilege. I mean, just to sit at that table in kind of one of the MASH tents they had set up over there and have a cup of coffee in your hand. And couple times I heard you guys doing the same thing, just having the conversation. Hey, what are you guys doing to work through this? And a couple of them I suggested what we suggest so frequently, and that is to have a thanks journal. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and the body is going to keep a score of all that happened on those couple of weeks. That there will be scars and wounds on every one of those agencies and people till the day they die. And that's just how it is. They're called to navigate that and to take some of that on. But one of the effects is you really become truly, truly a negative Nelly. And it's hard not to. You see 67 people that you're responsible with for recovering and all their things. It's hard to go home and just be super positive after that. That's not a normal thing. But one of the things we were able to share is in Scripture it says to take every thought captive. And so my thoughts and my emotions, they may begin at a place that is involuntary, but I absolutely have the ability to guide and direct where those go. And one of the great things that we can do is a thanks journal. And so I sat with several of those agencies at dinner and said, hey, are you doing this? Are you writing things down? I said, there's positives out of this, right? We don't want to paint, I use the term, we don't want to paint a turd white. We don't want to take something that's stinky and awful and pretend that it's good. No, this is awful. I mean, this was a terrible tragedy, but what are you thankful for? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we learned while we were down there from one of those psychologists was also to write down what we're thankful for and what we're looking for tomorrow, to let our brains click off.
Something that we're anticipating doing the next day that is good, right?
Yeah. So to be able to share that stuff was truly life-giving. I mean, we were exhausted coming home, but man.
Well, and we kind of touched on this earlier a little bit, but what a wonderful thing that the three of us could be up there together. Yeah. So we could decompress in the evening. We could take that time to just, cut loose a little bit and laugh around the table. I know we stayed at a hotel just, a mile or so from the airport, and we're able to walk to area restaurants, and it was so helpful. And one of the things I was reminded of as we were kind of talking about this a bit is how even when Jesus was sending out his disciples, he was sending them out in pairs or more, right? It wasn't someone going out by themselves. And there's many reasons for that, perhaps, but one of the great benefits of having others to team together with, to partner together with, is that you can kind of remind each other of the good things that you did see, and you can help offload the things that we need to offload. But, maybe if one of us is a little lower, that maybe the other guy is able to give a little word of encouragement and get us, a good, healthy reset. So again, I want to thank you all for being a part of Team Shield here and doing this together with me.
It's a joy to get to do this, man. It really is. I came back from that week and just could not believe all the things that we got to do together. It's hard to look back and think, man, we really got to be a part of all that sometimes, and I also enjoyed not only getting to decompress with you guys, but I got to enjoy getting to decompress with some of the folks that we served with, that we went out to dinner with at night, and
Yep.
Yes.
And I thought that was good because I thought that was some healthy perspective for us all, just to be able to spend some time where we weren't in a stressful grieving scene, where we got to just have a few minutes where we all could kind of reset together. It was nice to have those moments that you don't get to have those conversations during the day. When you're in the thicket of everything. But we got to, so the three of us got to spend time, just the three of us. But then we also got to spend some downtime with some of those folks we got to serve with, which was really nice.
Yeah, I tell you, we are very fortunate to be able to partner with some of these other organizations and groups. And there's a special group of people that we were able to serve with up there. And we're coming from different backgrounds. We're coming from, of course, almost everybody there, perhaps everybody there from currently living in Virginia and serving in various agencies in various ways in Virginia. But of course, everyone has a story. Some of them moved from states away and that kind of thing. But special people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think one thing that we talked about as we were kind of coming off of all of this, and one thing that the three of us have shared quite a bit talking about is, when we go through traumatic situations, and, even us, when we walk through people with traumatic situations, is we've got to find a way to a healthy way to cope with what we've experienced. What do we do how do we handle what we've seen? How do we handle what we've heard? How do we still give the best versions of ourselves to our families when we go home? Yeah. How do our spouses and our kids not suffer because we're suffering from the things that we've experienced? And so I think it would be a really good time for us to jump into the idea of what does healthy coping look like, and what unhealthy things should stay away. So I think what we should probably do is leave that as kind of a cliffhanger for our next episode. And so what we'd like to do is we'd like to invite you to come back next week, because what we're going to do is we've shared with you what we've experienced. We've shared with you what we've went through over the last couple of weeks. And the one thing that we didn't mention was that we ended up going back a second time to help with debriefs. We do those a lot here in the Valley, and we went back a second time to help with that. And so there's even a piece of that falls into all of this, right? So what do we do now that we're home? What do we do now so that we're, again, the best versions of ourselves for our spouses, for our kids? And we want you all who are listening to be the best versions of yourselves for your spouses and your kids. So how do we do that? How do we in a healthy way cope with what we've seen, cope with what we've heard, cope with what we've had to do? So make it a point to be back next week, because we're going to talk about that very thing. And we look forward to seeing you back for that episode.